Hey, what's up there, my man Big O? So here's the deal. I'm on the radio on Saturday arguing that Steve Kerr, yes, is the best coach in the history of the NBA. And lo and behold, I get a text. And it comes in from Orlando Azuguere, who is also known as the Big O. He says, there's no way that Steve Kerr is the best. You must be smoking California's finest.
Yes.
Right, Big O? Is that how it went down?
Yeah,
I
said you're officially smoking California's finest, thinking that, yes, you were tripping.
Okay, so, I mean, I can't believe that, and by the way, I'm at the minority of this, Big O.
Yeah, you should be the only one on that island.
How is that possible? I've never seen once Popovich leave his team and still coach his team at a high level. He's never been able to pull that off. To me, that right there immediately makes Steve Kerr the best coach to ever walk on the face of the earth that's coached in the NBA.
It's all about availability, unreal. Baby. It's all about availability in this world.
He's available. He's available. Steve Kerr's just got to walk in at halftime and say a few things, and he just sort of lets the machine run as he's already built it. That's why he's such a phenomenal coach. He doesn't even have to be on the sidelines.
He didn't even.
That's how unbelievable
he
the coach
didn't
is.
Really.
Still, he's successful.
He didn't really build all of that. You know, their defensive. Their defensive disposition came from Mark Jackson.
Okay, there's something to that, but I'll say this: Steve Kerr, he was the guy that brought it all together. You know, he was the guy that brought the defensive toughness in, and he embraced that, and he carried on the traditions that Mark Jackson did. And then he added his little spin.
And choked away a 3-1 lead last year.
Hey, you know what? Other 28 teams didn't even make it to the finals. They're Big L. You know, Popovich didn't even make it.
Hey,
Orlando,
they're the ones that won 73 games without winning the title, my brother. You don't win 73 games and not win the title. That's why Michael Jordan leaned over to the owner and said, 73 wins doesn't mean S if you don't win the championship.
Yeah, that's because Michael Jordan, you know what? He felt a little inferior at that point. He started to feel like, ooh. He's like, you know, in that movie, the Rocky IV, and the Russian gets cut. And he starts to bleed, and he's like, "Oh my God,
he's bleeding!"
Yeah, the Russian is cut. He's cut. I mean, it's like, and that's the moment when Rocky turned things around, and that's because not only did Rocky inflict physical pain on the Russian, he had the Russian finally realize that, in fact, he's human and that he will wear out, and eventually he did. That's the moment that Michael Jordan was through. He realized, oh my gosh, I thought I was immortal. I thought I was untouchable, never would die. I never thought I was subject to pain, injury, or sickness. And lo and behold, in that moment when the Golden State Warriors ran off 73 wins, he started thinking in his mind, oh boy, maybe I am mortal. Maybe my records will be ultimately superseded.
But they weren't.
And maybe I will go down in history as one of the great ones and not the best.
They weren't. He won 72 and the title, so his is still better.
Well, I'll tell you this. He knows they're young. He knows the Golden State Warriors are young. He knows that they're going to be contending for that record/championship almost every year for the next 5 to 6 years. That's why he said that didn't mean beep. It's because in reality he's saying, oh my gosh, I'm human and I don't want to be human. Everybody looks at me as a god. I want to be a god to everybody around me. I don't want to be human. I want to be above everybody. That's all it was. His ego was speaking.
What about Kaepernick and Manziel and RG3 and what any kind of professional football might hold for those three?
Well, I mean, I think you got Kaepernick. He's still in the mix, guys, because Seattle's been leaking out information that they like him to come in as their backup, and that's not any front or smoke screen. It's by design. They want to hear the reaction of the fan base. They also want to test the team to see how they react. I mean, people have feelers. I mean, John Schneider, by the way, was that feeler with the Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. He would always come down to the locker room and, you know, he'll drop little things like, hey, guys, we're thinking of trading for Tony Gonzalez. And then he'd leave, and we're like, what? And we talk amongst ourselves. And, you know, they'd sit back and sort of let things sort of marinate a little bit and see if anything would, you know, creep back up to the top. And, man, that was a colossal failure there by Carl Peterson. Jace. We would have had, think about it, guys, in 2007, we would have had Tony Gonzalez in nuestro equipo, in our team. Man. And lo and behold, Carl Peterson, and it was all because I talked to Tony Gonzalez at the Super Bowl. Everything was ready to go. Everything was signed, sealed, ready to be delivered in the last second. The former general manager, who, by the way, he had a tough time there, although I respect him, Carl Peterson, with the Kansas City Chiefs, pulled the plug and said, nope, you are stuck here, Tony. But anyway, you always have those feelers out there. And that's what John Schneider was doing up there with Seahawks, and he's doing that because he's legitimately thinking about bringing in Kaepernick and RG3, and then they throw out both their names, RG3 and Kaepernick, for negotiating purposes, you know, just to let everybody know, hey, you know, we're not going to overpay for you because we also feel like a guy like RG3 could come and help us in the same respect that Kaepernick could, which is you're going to hold the clipboard. Our guy stays healthy for the most part, talking about Russell Wilson, and we may need you to come in relief. He's a running quarterback, and if you did, we would still keep the same playbook in place because they're both running quarterbacks. So, but Manziel, he's probably not going to get back in the league. And if they did want to get back in the league, that's where this Canadian Football League's coming in. You might as well go up there, show people that you're willing to play, willing to learn, willing to grow, and that then maybe opens up some doors. And that's, a colossal failure of Tim Tebow. That really made me question his intentions of even wanting to be an NFL quarterback instead of going and playing baseball. Go up to Canada, bud, or go to the Arena Football League. Show us that you want to work your craft and convince some of these decision makers that maybe don't like your flavor right now, that maybe you can suit what they're looking for, which is they want to see you throw the ball a little better, And so the point is that it could be an opportunity for some of these guys, but it's always smart, I would say, that you get some of these fringe guys that are whose careers are in the balance. But I'll say this, most likely we will not see Colin Kaepernick ever again in the NFL, guys.
There's a guy that should be the number one overall pick, I'm telling you, and it's McCaffrey. He should be the number one guy for the simple fact value. You're getting a legit 3-for-1 player. A guy who could come in and take 3 roster spots, running back, wide receiver, and special teams. You know how much flexibility that gives you in building your team, Dan? I mean, literally, you don't have to feel pressure. You know how many teams feel pressured to keep an extra corner, keep an extra running back, keep an extra guy for, whether it's a wide receiver, corner, or whatever that can do special teams just because they need that one guy because, man, we need some depth as a returner. You know what? We need some depth at the running back. He gives you the flexibility where it's like, no, we can keep 3. If we have 3 really good quarterbacks, we could keep all 3 of them.
But if he's good enough, if Christian McCaffrey is good enough at running back or wide receiver,
and there's no question he is,
then all of a sudden his return abilities aren't as valuable. So you still have to add a guy. Why would you put a return guy out so he could get injured more? That you're using him.
Do you know Adrian Peterson's rookie year was a return guy?
And he's not doing it now.
It doesn't matter. The point is he has the ability to do that. If they need, like Charles Woodson. What year was he? Man, he must have been in year 8, 9 when he did that for us.
So Danny Woodhead would be your number 1 pick from like 6 years ago because you can use him in different.
No, because Danny Woodhead he's not as good at all 3 of those things. Christian McCaffrey, this is how good he is. As a running back, he's as good as Ezekiel Elliott. As a slot receiver, he's as good as a Tyler Lockett, who was drafted 2nd round last couple years ago to the Seattle Seahawks. He's as good as any explosive return guy that we've seen come out of the college ranks since maybe Devin Hester. So you're talking about Tyler Lockett, Ezekiel Elliott, all in one? What? And then we're not even...
You think Christian McCaffrey, as a running back, is better than Ezekiel Elliott, the physical nature?
Just as good.
No way. There's no question. He can't take on the physical...
He's just as good as any...
block like Zeke either.
He's just as good as any slot receivers. He's as good as an Emmanuel Sanders. He's as good as Julian Edelman. He's as good as those guys when you put... And if you don't believe me, go watch his film, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, go watch his film. He will make guys miss like you wouldn't believe as a slot guy. And last year, his production, I did one of his games, the first game against Kansas State. And the thing that struck me was he had 2 young quarterbacks that did no reading whatsoever. They would, in a passing situation, they would put McCaffrey out in a slot. They would immediately turn to McCaffrey and wait for him to get open. And he still would get open. It's like defenses knew where he was going to be, and yet he still succeeded tremendously in an offense to where there was not many options as to weapons. So, I mean, to me, there's no question. If you're drafting purely, if you're just eliminating all of the history and tendencies and what you should do versus not, and you look at it for what it is, which is simply we're drafting for value, McCaffrey should be the number 1 overall pick, and it should be a runaway.